I planned a future with him. Then I found 40 other women on his account, documented everything and notified them. He filed a restraining order, court dismissed it, I moved out, never looked back. I used to dream about the moment he'd propose. I thought it would be quiet, meaningful. Maybe on a walk, maybe over dinner. Nothing flashy, just him and me and that look in his eyes I used to believe was love. I didn't need fireworks or photographers. I just wanted the man I loved to ask me to be his forever. Instead, I got a spreadsheet. 42 names, 42 women. Some had pet names next to them. Others had cities. A few were just emojis. And one marked in all caps, moving in. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We were together for 2 years. Lived together, shared a bank account, spent holidays with each other's families. His mother hugged me like a daughter. His friends joked I'd finally tamed him. I laughed along even when that little voice in the back of my head whispered that something wasn't quite right. That voice got louder in March when he took me ring shopping. I cried in the parking lot afterward, happy tears. He kissed them away and said, "This year, baby, I promise." It was the kind of day you save in your memory like a pressed flower. Beautiful, delicate, and eventually ruined. A week later, he had a threesome with a married couple. I didn't find out until much later, of course. Back then, I was still in delusion mode, lighting candles at night, cooking dinner. He'd come home late to massaging his shoulders while he scrolled through scripts. What he was actually doing was texting the wife of that couple who he'd already gotten permission to sleep with before Christmas. Turns out he and the husband had an arrangement. Turns out I was the only one who didn't know. But like I said, delusion. When things started to shift, it wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was cold. He stopped looking at me the same way. Stopped laughing at my jokes. Started accusing me of being too sensitive, too jealous, too dramatic. He said I needed to go back to therapy. Said I was sabotaging our relationship with my trust issues. So I believed him. For an entire month, I let him gaslight me into thinking I was the reason we were falling apart. I cried myself to sleep, lost 13 pounds, missed work, missed meals, missed myself. Meanwhile, he started getting dressed for dates, cologne, clean shave, new clothes, while I lay curled up on the bed we used to share, trying not to exist. Then, on my birthday, he told me, like it was a favor, "I've been seeing someone." Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I made a mistake," just information. Like he was reading me a weather report. I broke. Not publicly, not loudly. I didn't throw anything. I didn't scream. I just shut off. It felt like the floor underneath me gave way, and I fell through every version of our relationship, every kiss, every night we talked about babies, every grocery trip, every movie night, free-falling through it all until I hit the truth. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked his iPad. He'd synced his texts without realizing it. Or maybe he knew and just didn't care. Either way, it was all there. The emotional affair with the wife. The plans to move in with a 22-year-old girl he'd met 12 days earlier. Intimate texts to a woman he was hooking up with tonight. A selfie labeled for my girl sent to 3 different numbers. 27 women at first, then 34, then 42. I started writing them down. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was something quieter, something surgical. I didn't scream or cry, I just took notes, time-stamped every message, cross-referenced screenshots, compiled phone numbers, and slowly the story of who he really was started to take shape. The married woman, the girl from out of town who'd already booked a flight, the OnlyFans collaborations, the intimate parties, the messages to women he called Princess Angel future wife, while asking for unclothed photos in the same breath. Every part of me that still wanted to believe this was a misunderstanding passed away that night. And something else was born. I don't know what to call her yet. The version of me who stayed up all night with red eyes and a charger cable in one hand, scrolling and screenshotting and remembering every single time he said, "I'd never hurt you." The me who started reaching out. Not to him, never again, but to them. The women. Some knew. Some didn't. A few had been through it already and were ready to burn it all down with me. We met through an app made for tea and trauma, and by morning we had a group chat, a plan, and a shared mission. If he wanted to perform, fine. But this time, the audience was ready. They say hindsight is 20/20, but that's not true. In hindsight, I didn't see it all clearly. I saw too much. Every moment, every red flag, Every subtle betrayal I'd smoothed over in my mind replays like a highlight reel from a horror show I unknowingly starred in. The kind of horror where the monster sleeps in your bed, kisses your forehead, and tells you he's just not ready to propose yet because he's working through some stuff. But in the beginning, he was perfect. Too perfect. We met through mutual friends. He was charming, the kind of guy who lights up a room and knows it. The kind who remembers everyone's name, their favorite drink, their dog's birthday. Women gravitated to him, of course they did, and he made sure I noticed. But back then, I thought it was me he wanted. He said I was different, that he was tired of the games, that I calmed him, that I saw the real him. God, that line. You see the real me. Looking back, I think I did. I just didn't know what I was looking at yet. We moved in together quickly, less than 6 months in. I didn't question it. It felt right. I had a stable job, a nice apartment, and he was between leases, so it made sense. At least that's what I told myself. I paid the rent, utilities, groceries. He paid with promises. Once my acting gigs pick up, once this short film gets picked up, once I get verified on Instagram. Always, once, never, now. I didn't mind at first. I believed in him. I supported his career with everything I had, editing reels, writing captions, even helping him memorize scripts before auditions he almost never got. When he did book something, it was all about me. I couldn't have done this without you. You're my rock. I clung to that praise like oxygen. But slowly, the cracks started to show. First, it was the friends he suddenly stopped mentioning. One by one, women I'd met at parties, on group trips, in old tagged photos, they just vanished from our conversations. If I brought them up, he'd get quiet. If I asked questions, I'd get a sigh and the classic, "You're overthinking again." Then came the passwords. He used to hand me his phone freely. He'd toss it on the bed while he showered, leave it charging next to mine. Slowly, that stopped. Face down became the default. Notifications mysteriously disappeared. One time I walked past him on the couch and saw a message flash from someone saved as delivery. It said, "Miss you already?" I asked. He laughed. "It's just a friend." She's dramatic. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because if I didn't, then I had to admit that I was sharing a home and maybe a life with someone I couldn't trust. And I wasn't ready for that, not after everything I'd invested. So I turned it inward. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe I was broken. I started going back to therapy, not to process his actions, but to fix myself. To heal my abandonment wounds so I wouldn't project them onto a good man. That's what he said. And I repeated it to my therapist like scripture. I remember one night in particular. It was storming. I was curled on the couch, knees tucked under me, asking him if he still loved me. Not because he'd done anything that day, but because he hadn't. He hadn't touched me in weeks. We hadn't laughed in longer than that. He was distant, distracted, irritable. But when I asked, he scoffed. "You're so exhausting," he said. "I can't breathe in this relationship." And just like that, I became the problem. I stopped asking. I tiptoed. I cooked his favorite meals. I scheduled intimacy, pathetic but true. And every time he left the apartment late at night to clear his head, I told myself I trusted him. I didn't. But I also didn't want to be the crazy girlfriend, the clingy one, the one who checks phones and sets traps. So instead, I let myself rot from the inside out. By the time he took me ring shopping, I was already a shell of the person who moved in with him. And when he kissed my temple in that jewelry store and whispered, "You deserve everything," I almost believed him again. That's how good he was. The cracks didn't burst open until the week after, when I found out months later that was the same week he arranged a threesome with a married couple. She was someone I had met once at a party, introduced as an old friend. I remembered her because she'd smiled at me just a little too long. Now I understand that smile. It wasn't admiration, it was pity. From what I eventually pieced together, he'd gotten permission from her husband months earlier, maybe even before Christmas. While we were wrapping gifts and talking about baby names, he was negotiating a side deal for intimacy with someone else's wife. And when I was setting the table for New Year's dinner with my parents, he was sending her mirror selfies captioned, "Bet you wish I was unwrapping you instead." And still, I blamed myself. That's the part that stings the most. Not the cheating, not even the betrayal. but the slow erosion of my own self-worth that let me stay through it. He didn't just lie to me, he taught me how to lie to myself. And I was a fast learner. The emotional abuse didn't look like yelling or name-calling. It looked like eye rolls. It looked like subtle digs. You're so emotional. You always make everything about you. You just want drama. It looked like him walking out mid-argument and me standing there alone apologizing to an empty room. He didn't break me all at once. He chipped away inch by inch, sigh by sigh, lie by lie, until the woman who used to hold boundaries was gone, replaced by someone who flinched when his phone buzzed. It was around that time that I started losing weight. At first I didn't notice. Then my therapist pointed it out. Then my friends. "Are you okay?" they'd ask. I'd smile. Just busy. But the truth was I wasn't eating. I didn't feel hungry. My body had gone into mourning before my mind had caught up. And then came my birthday. He forgot, or pretended to, gave me a half-hearted happy birthday in the morning, left for the day, came home smelling like cheap cologne. That night, he sat me down on the couch and said the words like he was reading from a script he barely rehearsed. "I've been seeing someone else." No apology, no tears, just a cold delivery. I asked for how long. He shrugged. "It doesn't matter." That was when something inside me cracked, but not in the way I expected. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I felt something else move through me, something hard and clear. A quiet voice that said, "You already knew. Now it's time to act like it." So I waited until he went to sleep. Then I opened his iPad. It was linked to his phone. Messages synced, apps logged in. He'd always been careless with tech. That night it became my lifeline. What I saw wasn't just betrayal, it was operation-level logistics. He wasn't cheating, he was running a damn rotation. 27 women, each with their own nickname routine and set of lies. One girl believed she was his girlfriend. Another was flying in from Chicago next week. Another thought they were planning to move in together. And me, I was the ghost in the machine scrolling through proof that the last 2 years of my life had been a script written by someone who never loved me. I didn't cry. I got a notebook. By dawn, I had pages of names, screenshots, timelines. I was building a case not for court, but for clarity. I needed to understand who he really was. And once I saw the pattern, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't new. He'd been doing this from the beginning, possibly before me, possibly during our move-in, possibly always. I felt numb, then angry, then strategic. Because if there's one thing I learned from loving a liar, it's how to pay attention. And I was done ignoring the truth. I didn't eat for 3 days after I opened his iPad. Not because I was devastated, although I was. Not because I was heartbroken, though, every breath felt like a glass shard moving through my chest. But because I was busy, consumed, fully possessed by the mission of knowing, of cataloging, of seeing all of it. Every lie, every woman, every word he used to slice us into categories, the flirty ones, the naive ones, the easy ones. I saw messages where he told one girl he was thinking of settling down soon while arranging a hookup with another. He was a professional manipulator. An actor who'd never needed a script because people like me and all those women were more than willing to write it for him. And now, I was flipping the pages back. I made a spreadsheet. First names, phone numbers, location if I could find it, and how long the overlap had lasted. Some were flings, just a few texts and unclothed photos. Others were fully formed relationships. He told one girl he loved her, that he wanted to move to Texas for her. She replied, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." That text was from 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we were splitting a pizza in bed, and he was watching a documentary with his head on my stomach. 2 weeks ago, I was still making excuses for why he didn't say I love you as often anymore. 2 weeks ago, I thought we were healing. God, how humiliating. At first, I didn't know what to do. I had all this information, this proof, but nowhere to put it. What do you do when the person you trusted most turns out to be a shapeshifter, and you suddenly realize your entire relationship was built on smoke? You write it down. You sort it. You clean the wreckage like an archaeologist digging through someone else's ruined civilization. I went to Reddit. Not to post yet, but to search. I found an app someone mentioned called The Tea. a place where women anonymously share stories, warn each other, compare notes. I made a burner account and posted a vague thread, anyone else been with his initials in LA? Within 12 hours, I had 2 DMs. The first woman had met him at a party a year ago. He told her he was trapped in a toxic relationship, and they had a short affair. When she found out he had a live-in girlfriend, he told her I was abusive, that he was planning his escape. The second woman dated him briefly after we moved in together. They stopped seeing each other when he ghosted her for a few weeks. She now realized it was around the time he started posting me on Instagram. We got coffee. I showed them the spreadsheet. They showed me screenshots of old DMs and photos. One of them still had a video he sent her, a slow-motion shirtless gym mirror selfie. I recognized the towel he was using. It was mine. We didn't cry. We didn't even yell. We plotted. Because here's the thing. When you realize you're not the only one, it stops feeling like a personal failure and starts looking like a pattern. And if someone's willing to treat that many people like they're disposable, then exposure isn't drama, it's public service. So we started drafting a message. Something short, factual, direct. No slander, no threats, just, hi. You don't know me, but we've both been involved with name. I thought you should know that he's been involved with over 40 women at the same time. I have proof. If you want to see it, I'm happy to talk. We edited it down like lawyers, every word vetted, every comma intentional. Then I made a new email account, a new Google Voice number, and we started sending them out one by one. The responses came in waves. Some women were in shock. Some denied it outright. That's not possible. He told me he hasn't dated anyone since his ex 2 years ago. Some were angry, not at him, at me. They thought I was trying to sabotage something real. I didn't blame them. I remembered how deeply I'd wanted to believe I was the exception, not the pattern. But others, they thanked me. One canceled a flight to see him. Another broke down crying on the phone, admitting she'd been saving money to move in with him. Another said she'd made an intimate tape with him and was terrified it was being sold. He'd recently started posting content previews online talking about launching an OnlyFans. Her tattoo was visible in one of the teasers. That's when the fear crept in. This wasn't just cheating anymore, it was exploitation, coercion, maybe worse. The manipulation was so layered, so rehearsed, that I started to realize this man wasn't just careless, he was calculated. Every woman was a mark, and I'd been his warm-up act. He was also still living in our apartment. I couldn't confront him yet, not safely. He had no idea what I'd found. Every day I played dumb, smiled, did laundry, let him eat food I paid for while he went out with friends, aka scheduled hookups with women he was lying to about being single. But behind the scenes, I was organizing an archive. I documented everything. Created folders, labeled screenshots, backed up videos. I printed texts and bound them. I cross-referenced dates with receipts, social media posts, and geotags. I was building a dossier, and I wasn't the only one. Word started spreading. Women messaged me now. Some had only flirted with him. Some had slept with him. Some had been ghosted. Some were still in it. One girl told me she was 21. He told her he was 26. He's 30. She had no idea. She blocked him while we were on the phone. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. He announced he was moving out. Said it casually, like he was doing me a favor. Said he needed space. That we weren't working anymore. That he still cared but didn't want to hurt me. I didn't say a word. Just nodded. I understand. Inside, I was vibrating. He moved out on a Sunday. On Monday morning, the messages went out, every single one of them. 42 women. I didn't even get the ones from dating apps, just the ones he'd kept in his phone or messaged through Instagram, WhatsApp, and Twitter DMs. I sent messages to every single one of them. I also sent a private message to his mother, his brother, his best friend, and the casting director who'd recently put him on a short list. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth out there. Some bridges you don't burn, you just recognize they were never yours to walk on in the first place. What happened next was surreal. Women canceled trips, blocked him, shared their stories. He started losing followers. One woman edited his face out of every photo she'd ever posted. Another took a screenshot of our messages and posted it publicly, tagging his name. One of the girls messaged me later, "I can't believe I almost moved in with him. Thank you for saving my life." Still, he said nothing. That silence was its own confession. He untagged himself from our couple photos, blocked me on everything, but he never denied it, never confronted me, never tried to explain. I think part of him still believes he can lie his way out of it. That charm will save him, that he's the hero of the story. But I have the script now, and I've shared it. I decided to go public, made a few TikToks, calm, simple, used soft music and a neutral voice. Let the screenshots speak for themselves. Didn't scream, didn't accuse, just posted the evidence. Thousands of women watched. Hundreds reached out. Most said the same thing. This happened to me too. I wish I'd done what you did. One video was just a clip of us dancing smiling during what I thought was our anniversary dinner. I changed the caption to, "This was the same week he told another girl he was in love with her." It went viral. I still hadn't mentioned the intimate parties, or the OnlyFans plans, or the fact that I found graphic mock-ups for collab content with a woman I now knew was 23. I held that back. Maybe loyalty, maybe restraint, maybe exhaustion. I'd been at war for weeks. My soul was tired. Then one of the women messaged me in a panic. She'd just seen him promote a new link, said he was launching soon, said it would be intimate. She was worried it included her. I was too. Because I'd seen his text history. I knew how easily he asked for videos, knew how many women said yes thinking it was private, thinking he cared. I still don't know how far he's gone, but I know he's capable of it. And then, just when I thought it was over, I got a letter in the mail, a law firm, an unfamiliar name, offering me representation for a potential court date. Confused, I called. They asked if I was aware that a domestic violence restraining order had been filed against me. My blood ran cold. He was trying to flip the script, claiming I was a threat, that I had access to a firearm and could show up at his new apartment, that I was unstable, dangerous. There was a firearm in the apartment, but it wasn't mine. It belonged to an old roommate who moved out a year ago and left it behind. I never touched it. He did. He even threatened to use it on himself when we first started unraveling. And now he was using that to paint me as the abuser. But he forgot something. I have records, therapist notes, screenshots, videos, statements from women, timeline logs, everything. I wasn't just angry, I was prepared. Because when a man like that tries to silence you, you don't panic. You print receipts. Court was set for Friday, and I was ready. Court smelled like cold paper and anxiety. I sat there numb in the secondhand blazer I borrowed from a friend, clutching a binder filled with screenshots, therapist letters, and a timeline I knew by heart. Across the room, he sat next to his attorney, in a tailored suit, jaw tight, pretending not to see me. He looked like he always does when he's trying to perform controlled, focused, rehearsed. I watched him fix his cufflinks as if this was just another audition. It was almost impressive the way he played the victim. Until you remembered how good he'd always been at it. The judge was calm, unreadable. She asked basic questions. His lawyer presented the statement he'd filed, a carefully worded narrative full of omission. According to him, I was unstable, obsessed, threatening. There was a gun in the house. He feared for his safety. He wanted peace. I didn't speak until it was my turn. When I stood up, my knees trembled, but my voice didn't. I laid out everything, the therapist's notes confirming my emotional state after the breakup. The weapon's ownership records, the texts he'd sent about using it on himself, the receipts of him still living with me long after claiming I was dangerous. Then came the screenshots. I handed over labeled packets, every message, every name, every lie he'd told while sharing a bed with me. The judge skimmed them quietly, flipping through pages of truth dressed in digital ink. His face didn't move. Not once. No flicker of guilt, no shame, just silence. I think he believed that staying still would make him look more credible. But to me, it just confirmed everything. He wasn't scared of me. He was scared of accountability. After an hour, the judge dismissed the restraining order. She said there was no evidence I'd posed any threat, that the petition seemed more retaliatory than protective. She didn't say it out loud, but I could hear the subtext. This was a weapon, just not the kind he claimed. Outside the courtroom, I didn't cry, I didn't gloat. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and breathed. Deep, guttural, exhausted breaths. Then I picked up my phone and opened the group chat. I texted 2 words, "It's done." But something had shifted in me that morning. It wasn't just relief. It wasn't just justice. It was clarity. I finally saw him for what he was. Not a mistake, not a toxic ex, but a deliberate destroyer. A man who moved through life collecting women like currency, draining them for attention, intimacy, stability, until they had nothing left to give. Then discarding them, smiling all the while. I went home and deleted his contact. I archived our photos, not out of nostalgia, but documentation proof of who I was before. I changed my locks, canceled every subscription we shared, cleared the apartment of his remaining things, a hoodie, a toothbrush, a half-used bottle of cologne. I dumped it all in a garbage bag and left it by the front door with a sticky note, "Final performance over. Exit stage left." The next day, something surreal happened. One of my TikToks hit 1 million views. It was the dancing video, the one with the ironic caption. People flooded the comments. Some shared their own stories. Others tagged their friends. "Isn't this the guy you dated?" A few women came forward with new information. One confirmed he'd been using old intimacy tapes. Another said he was pitching a reality show about dating in LA. I didn't even know whether to laugh or scream. I hadn't planned for this to go viral. I didn't expect a wave of solidarity from strangers. But it made me realize something: this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman he'd lied to, every person he'd manipulated, every time he used his charm like a scalpel. And now, for once, people were finally seeing the stitches. One of the girls I messaged early on reached out again. She'd just landed back in LA and asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. We chose a quiet spot, sat under string lights with matcha lattes, and talked for hours. We shared stories, laughed at the absurdity of it all, cried a little. She said I thought I was crazy. He made me think I was the problem. I nodded. That's his talent. Making you think you're unstable while he burns down your world. We left that night with a silent promise we'd never let another woman feel like that again. The TikTok comments kept coming. Some were cruel, some questioned my motives, but most were supportive. Women saying, "You saved me. This happened to me too. I needed to see this." I started to realize that the thing I was most ashamed of, loving someone like him, was also the thing that had helped others escape their own private hells. And still he stayed silent. Not a text, not a call, not a denial, just absence. I know he saw everything. He untagged himself from photos, deleted comments, deactivated one of his side accounts. But he never spoke to me. Not once. That silence says more than any apology ever could. I don't know if he's still seeing those women. I don't know if the OnlyFans project ever launched. I don't check anymore. I've learned to detach, to breathe again, to wake up without that heaviness in my chest. Some mornings are still hard. The trauma doesn't just leave, but it no longer defines me. I used to think closure came from confrontation, that I needed him to admit it, to confess, to tell me why. Now I know that closure is something you build yourself, brick by brutal brick. And sometimes the silence is the loudest truth you'll ever hear. I thought revenge would feel like fire, like something explosive, dramatic, cathartic in the way movies promise it will be, where the villain gets what he deserves and the screen fades to black while the audience cheers. But real life doesn't work like that. Revenge, if that's even what this was, felt quieter, like a tide pulling back, like breathing again after you didn't realize you'd been holding your breath for 2 years. There was no applause, no grand finale, just stillness. He never responded to anything I said, never acknowledged the fallout, never contacted me after court, or after the messages went out, or after the TikToks started gaining views. He just disappeared. Slipped out of the story like a ghost who never intended to haunt you forever, just long enough to ruin the furniture. But even silence can be a confession. And in that silence, I began to rebuild. I reconnected with friends I'd pulled away from during the relationship, the ones he subtly discouraged, the ones I stopped calling because I was too ashamed to admit how bad it had gotten. I cleaned my apartment top to bottom, repainted the bedroom, bought a new comforter that he'd never touched, lit candles without wondering if the smell would bother him. It was small, but it was mine again. I started therapy twice a week. Real therapy, not the kind I used to go to so I could fix myself enough to be more palatable for him. No, this time it was for me, to grieve, to process, to forgive the version of me who stayed too long, gave too much, and begged for crumbs while he dined elsewhere. She didn't know better. but I do now. And something else happened too. The women, many of them stayed in touch. Some faded out, naturally moved on with their lives healed quietly. Others check in from time to time. One of them is now a close friend. We joke that we're trauma sisters bonded by betrayal and brunch. There's something strangely sacred about building friendship on the ruins of someone else's lies. Like we planted flowers in the ashes. Not everyone supported what I did. Some people called me bitter, petty, overdramatic. Said I went too far by warning other women. That I should have taken the high road. But I've learned that the high road is usually built by the people who never had to walk it. Let them judge. They weren't the ones sleeping next to someone who could lie through a smile. The most surprising thing, I don't hate him. I don't forgive him either, but hate is a tether, and I don't want to be connected to him anymore. He doesn't get space in my heart. He doesn't get weight in my thoughts. He doesn't get to define what I become next. He took enough already. What I've come to understand is that some people don't want love, they want supply. They want attention, admiration, novelty. And when you love someone like that deeply, faithfully, fully, they see it not as a gift, but a resource. A faucet to drink from until it runs dry. Then they move on looking for another full cup. But I'm not a cup anymore. I'm a damn ocean. And he never learned to swim. The videos are still up. I left them. Not out of spite, but because I know there will be other women. He's charming, beautiful, tragic in just the right way. He'll find new listeners for the same script. So the videos stay like warning signs on a cliffside road. Turn back now. I didn't, and it nearly destroyed me. Sometimes late at night I wonder if he watches them, if he feels anything. Shame, regret, fear. I doubt it, but it doesn't matter anymore. This story started with a ring shopping trip, with dreams of proposals and promises, but it ends with something better. Me. I may be bruised. I may still flinch when I hear certain songs. I may never look at mirror selfies the same way again. But I'm not broken, I'm not weak, and I'm not silent. He taught me how to lie to myself. But now I know how to tell the truth loudly, clearly, and without apology. And that is something he'll never be able to erase.